Welcome to Recovery Uncovered, your all things recovery podcast. Recovery Uncovered is produced by MHAB Enterprises, a division of the Northeast Group of Companies located right here in Plattsburgh, New York. I'm your host, Mike Carpenter.
Affectionately known as MHAB Mike, and I'm your co-host, Betsy Vicencio.
Affectionately known as BV the Normie. We have one goal in these podcasts, and that's not to suck. Thanks for tuning in. Good morning, everybody. I am Mike Carpenter, affectionately known as MHAB Mike. I'm your host for Recovery Uncovered. This is my sidekick, Betsy Vicencio, affectionately known as BV the Normie. How you doing today, Bets?
Good morning, Michael. I'm well. How are you this morning?
Oh, I'm doing just great.
I knew that about you.
You know, we had that little fight the other night over cell phones, but that's okay.
We didn't have a fight over cell
You
phones.
just
We had,
irritated
everything I do irritates you.
But I just want to remind everybody that if you saw last week's podcast, was it last week that Bridget was here and we talked?
Yes,
I
it was
said very
Bridget.
nice stuff about Betsy. Even Bren and Telly were impressed that I was very loving to you. I no
I
longer
was-
blame you for your daughter's addiction, at least publicly.
Well, at least in that podcast you didn't.
Podcast.
I appreciated that. Thank you.
So we have an incredibly exciting podcast, I think, today that should hopefully bring to light some stuff that is a real problem in this society, and one of the things that we've been able to work through. Our guest today is Dave Stone, and Dave Stone is a dear friend of mine, and we've been friends for a lot of years, although we probably could have been friends a lot longer than what we've been. And some people may say because of race we weren't good friends early on. It wasn't that. It was really because of Dave's arrogance that I couldn't be his friend. And Dave will tell you when it's his chance to speak that because of Mike's arrogance I couldn't
That's
be
right.
friends.
Wait, I need to ask a question because I believe that
Well, let me
Dave-
finish my introduction.
Oh, all right, you
first,
finished?
all right?
Well, I wanted to table that there might be other things beside race and arrogance on the table, not the least of which that David might have some degree of education that you might be a little bit
My-
twisted up
my
about.
dear
He has
friend-
to compensate for
Yes,
that.
he does. He absolutely does, Dave.
My dear, you can see how much fun this is going to be. My dear friend Dave Stone is a solid member of the recovery community. I count on him for a lot of stuff and have for many years. And so thank you for coming today. And
Thank you for
sitting
having
with
me.
us.
I'm happy to be here. Good to see you two again. And I know someone told you that the arrogance that you saw in me was really reflected in you.
I think I got the whole finger pointing back at me. Yeah.
You didn't invite me to your wedding.
Oh!
I've been hearing it.
And I keep telling Lizzie, I'll get invited to her second.
It would be the third wedding if he gets married again, just so we're all clear.
At some point you'll get over that resentment.
I might, you're on my list, I'm doing the 4 steps, so
So, I call you Stoney. So I mean, if I slip and don't call you David or Professor today,
fine.
I usually call you Stoney anyway.
I don't wear that mantle outside of campus. So.
That's the name I like is Stoney. So,
Works.
let's start by tell us a little bit about yourself, Dave, and how you got here, and what recovery is kind of like, and your journey to Northern New York.
Okay, well, I have been here just a little over 15 years. We moved here in July of 2005. It'll be 16 years in July. And I've been in recovery for 35 years. And so I participate in 12-step programs and have been since the beginning of my sobriety. And so moved here and sought out, the local, recovery community. And it's been, all I can say is it's been tremendous. The ups and downs of life that I have been through in the 15 years I've been here, people in the recovery community have always been there. They've always delivered. I remember when I had cancer, I was in the hospital. People brought a meeting to the hospital, went down the hall and got Dutch. It was the last meeting the Dutch ever attended,
That's right. That's right. I was
yeah.
one. Just
Yep,
I was
you
one
were
of those
there.
guys
You were there, yes.
Look at
And,
you. All about
another
you,
time,
right?
There've
Street
been people brought 2 or 3
Street
meetings
cred.
to my house,
Yeah.
I have felt, I felt welcomed, I felt supported, encouraged. I've found the community just to be tremendous. It's, and that's, when people in 12-step programs say, you know, no matter where you are, you can find your family. You know, no matter where you are, you can find your support group, and that's true. And it's in good shape here. So, I am married. Have 4 kids. The youngest one is in college at University of Colorado. He's in a physics program. I think this is a launch point for our talk. He's getting a PhD in physics. He's the smart one. Number
he
one.
is a smart. That kid is
Really.
he's really.
I watched him and your dad.
Yeah.
You know, you and I were there. We start talking, and we had to leave because we had to go get a
What the
dictionary.
hell are they talking about?
We had to go get a dictionary to understand what they were talking about. But he is in a PhD program in physics at the University of Colorado. It's the #1 program in the country. He took his comprehensive exams for his master's, and when he came out, when you take your comprehensive exams, there's a moment, I believe there's a moment where you know more than anybody else about that particular thing. You're the most up to date, you're the most knowledgeable, and it's quite an empowering, affirming feeling. And when he walked out of his comps, he said, all I could think about was 922 or 843. That's all I could think about, 843, 847. You know, and that was the time of the video of Chauvin and George Floyd. And he said he went into physics because he thought he could be a beacon, a model for other African Americans to join, you know, the STEM careers and STEM education. And it's just not enough. My son is leaving the program.
Really?
He's going to law school. He wants to be a civil rights lawyer.
Good for him.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I will tell you,
Yeah.
I know Keenan, you know, a little bit, not real well, but that kid can do just about
Yeah.
anything he puts his mind to. He is.
Well, he's
Now, I want to tell you that I also love your daughter, and I know her well, and she's a great dance teacher. We took ballroom
That's
dancing,
right.
and she
That's
was
right.
very patient with
Ryan's
me, who
wonderful.
has no ability to
Yep.
move. So
She's in the city. She works for a PR firm. You know, and you know, we're going to spend some time talking about alcohol and drugs and stuff like that, and addiction and addictive patterns. And she works for a PR agency that represents entertainers.
Oh,
And
wow.
every day
Yeah, I bet.
she has a moral struggle. You know, having to, you know, people in denial, people who see their golden goose, you know, getting away from them and stuff like that,
Yeah.
and trying to help them navigate those waters sanely, and you know, a client of theirs overdosed and died, and you know, the mother is like, my son's not a drug addict, my son's not a drug addict, and you know, and Ryan has to try to figure out how to, you know, spin this and make it work. And she when she walks out of the office every day, obviously remote, but when she gets off work every day, she feels like she just needs to wash it off of
Yeah.
her, you know.
It's got to feel
So,
dirty to
yeah,
have
yeah,
to
yeah,
craft a message that's so unauthentic to the people.
Exactly.
The situation pays no
Exactly.
honor
Yeah.
to
Well, that's
to
part
life.
of it. You know, you're exactly right, and that's part of the addictive stuff. You know, there's a shame factor for a lot of people. You know, and loved ones and people who are associated with addicts will twist the story. You know, because they're ashamed. You know,
Sure.
and they don't want to be embarrassed by it.
You know, one of the things that we try to do with this, and what I've tried to do, you've known me for years, is this whole stigma piece. This whole,
Yeah.
you know, I don't necessarily like being a poster child for recovery or any of that, because I think I wear a lot of other hats. I think I'm a lot of things. But if people that have been able to kind of become successful in their life aren't willing to stand up and go, you can change, then nobody
Right.
that's in the outside world ever sees us as anything other than, oh, those are those criminals. Those
Right,
are those
yeah,
people that
yeah.
are, you know, all screwed up. I mean, you know, you're a highly educated, very successful guy, and I know your story pretty well, so I'm going to ask you, that's not how you grew up.
No,
right? I
no,
mean,
You know, and you know, just to echo a little bit about what you said though was, you know, I've been reprieved. You know, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You know, I've danced along razor blades edges. You know, and for whatever reason, didn't fall off. You know, and I sunk pretty low in my in my life as an addict and an alcoholic, and I was dishonest. I would hustle people, and if I was someplace where you say the two of you were husband and wife, and we were in a bar having, drinking or whatever, or someplace getting high, and I'd be borrowing money from you and trying to get you to go to bed with me,
Wow.
and then laugh at you for giving me money that you ain't going to get back, and for sleeping with your wife.
Wow.
That's morally bankrupt.
All right, so wait, because I know a lot of cool stories about you. Tell us the Durango story.
Oh, okay.
Just tell me
Durango, Colorado.
I was in Durango, Colorado, and I was, I'm going to add a little bit to that, and that is, I was the director of a drug program.
You were director of a drug program?
I was an active addict.
And an addict at the time.
I almost sunk the program.
Wow.
I almost got it defunded. And one of my supervisees was a rugby player, and they drank and partied and all that kind of stuff, and they had a rugby game. And then a party at the rugby house after that, and one of the rugby team players died that night in his bed.
Oh.
And the last place he was alive was at this person's house. And my boss called me and he said, I want you to ask Victor if he uses cocaine, and if he says yes, I want you to fire him. So I went to Victor and I said, hey, Vic, I was supposed to ask you if you use coke. No, I don't use your coke, And that was our take on it after this man's death, And so that's how far removed I was from any humanity. And the funding application was late. The guy at State said, you have endangered the funding of your program. We don't know if you don't have any money, So that's Durango, and I was arrested in Durango, Colorado, Main Street, Durango, Colorado, for drunk and disorderly. And I was arguing with my wife. And cops came, somebody across the street saw us arguing, and sometimes when you see this, it sets up, sometimes when people see this, it sets up it sets in motion some associations, okay, that may or may not be true.
So when you say see this, you're talking about see a black man.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Okay.
I'm 6'3", she's 5'3". I probably
Okay.
weighed 250 pounds.
And you're drunk.
And I'm
Yep,
drunk.
so you're
yeah.
drunk,
and we're arguing,
big black man.
And I talk with my hands and all that kind of stuff. And someone called and said that there was a black man beating a white woman on the street. And so these cops came, and and I turned to them and said, "What do you want?" And it's like, boom, I'm up against the wall, handcuffed. And as my wife was walking away, I said, "Call Dave West. He's an attorney." And the two cops started laughing. They go, "He won't represent you. He's the city attorney." So and I'm just talking out of my behind. I'll have your badge. Do you know who I am? And that's that stuff in recovery where they tell you where you're not right sized. Your perception of how big you are is really inverted and terrible. So it took me to jail, and I was sitting in on this concrete bench. It had an iron ring in it. I was chained to that iron ring, and the thought occurred to me: this is how your ancestors came here. This is what your ancestors were chained to. And they didn't die, endure anguish, pain for you to be chained to addiction. And I drank for 5 more years, So then they put me in my cell. And the trustee was a client of the drug program. I knew him. He was in town drunk. We once counted up how much time he'd done doing 30 days, 60 days, 6 years, He brought me my slippers and my blanket. And he couldn't look at me. He turned his head. And something like that. That's pretty low. That's when I looked at the pipe up in the top of the cell, trying to figure out how to get the blanket around it so I could hang myself. That was pretty low.
Yeah.
And I don't ever want to forget that,
And you drank for 5 more years after
Drank
that.
for 5 more years. Got worse. It's like that, but that moment has stuck with me because it's important. It's important for me to understand how far down the scale I went, and it can happen again if I'm not vigilant, if I'm not practicing recovery is an active process, you know. When I ask people if they're in recovery, you know, I said, well, tell me about it. Articulate that for me. You know, what is that? Well, I don't hang out with the people I used to hang out with. I think, well, you're going to use again.
Right.
You know, if that's all you're doing. You know, or I keep myself busy. You know,
That's one of the best things you've ever told me over the years is when you ask people, well, what does recovery mean to you? You know, one of the things we did in I think our first or second podcast is we tried to, you know, put what the definition of being in recovery is. SAMHSA has one and all that, and it really is more than just saying, oh, well, I don't get high anymore.
Right.
There's so much more. You know,
Yeah.
when people like you and I stopped getting high, Dave, it was like, well, now what? Like, well, I still have all the problems. I still got all the trauma from being a child. I still got all the things that I've done wrong. I still got all the money I owe, all the people I screwed over. All that. Like, how do I deal with this?
Really,
now? Like, what you know? What am I supposed to do now?
That's right.
So in those last 5, when you came into recovery, when you first came into recovery, what kind of was the catalyst? What was it that said, okay, enough's enough, I'm going to do this?
Well, you know, there was a period, you know, drinking and alcohol, drugs and alcohol didn't bring me euphoria anymore during that last 5 years. You know, it was like just a transfusion so I could move. You know,
It's just maintenance.
that's
the only way to
exactly
stay
what it
alive
was.
every day.
That's exactly what it was. There was no joy, and I would go to bed at night and just shake from fear, and I didn't know what I was afraid of, and sob into my pillow. You know. Despair, I mean, it was hell. That's what hell is, you know.
David?
And it went on for months. And I went to a scholarship dinner, a fundraiser. It was over like at 8 o'clock, and I came home at 1 o'clock in the morning, and my wife says, well, you know, what the hell's up with this? You know? And she went to work the next day. I got up, waited a few hours, and then sent a dozen roses.
I spent a lot of money.
I want you're going to hear something you're going to want to bleep out, but so I waited. You know, I called her, and I said, you know, you get your roses, and she said, I don't want your fucking roses. You know, so when you send a woman roses, and that's what she says, you know you're in the doghouse. Right?
It's bad.
And she said, I am worried about your drinking, and that was the moment that all this piled up stuff had been waiting for. You know, the despair, the fear, the loneliness, the isolation, the depression. I said, I think I have a drinking problem.
You
And
said
was
that.
it.
You said that to her. Yeah.
That was it. It went away.
It's that moment of surrender. That
And
moment
she said,
of
get
saying,
some help or
okay,
get
enough's
out.
enough, yeah.
You know? She said, get some help or get out. You know, and like a lot of people who go into recovery, we don't walk in the door going, here I am, help me get well. You know? I walk in the door to save my home. You know, I walk in the door so I didn't have to live on the street.
Right.
You know. And it takes some time to realize.
You walk in going, are you going to help me like get my life back and
It
get
teaches
laid
you how to
and do all
drink.
the shit? Is everything going to be good in the world again? Yeah.
It teaches me how to not do this. And I'm one of those people. You know, I walked in the doors of recovery, and to escape the consequences of my behavior. You know, because I'd lived with good intentions. You know, I wanted to be a good dad, wanted to be a good husband, wanted to be a good employee. Failed at all of them. But people judged me on my behavior. They didn't judge me on my intentions. You know,
God,
I
that's such a
didn't
great
mean
point.
to. Oh God, I didn't mean to do that.
Yeah.
But you did.
Right.
Okay, yeah, I did, but I didn't mean it, right?
So I just
and I've now come to that very thing has become a kind of a mantra for me. You know, because in where people slip and make a racist or sexist or homophobic comment or something like that, and say, oh, you know, Betsy, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. But Betsy's feeling the pain of the insult, right? You're feeling my denial of your humanity. And I said, but I didn't mean it. You know?
that was not
I
my
said,
intention.
But it still hurts, you know, and you're responsible for the hurt. I need you to take some responsibility for that, rather than trying to dissociate yourself with it. You know, rather than trying to dissociate. Yeah, if I do that and you make me aware of it, I'm going to say, I'm really sorry. Thanks for making me aware of that. I won't do it again. Rather than, oh, no.
That's not what I meant.
You misunderstood.
Yep.
Now she has to defend it.
Yep.
Right?
You know, Lizzie says often that I was judging myself by my intentions, but the world was judging me by my actions. And
That's
it is
exactly
such
right.
a clear delineation.
Mhm,
Like I really was saying, but you can't hold me accountable. I didn't mean to do it. And it's
That's
like,
right,
well,
yeah.
don't give a shit what you meant to do.
That's
you,
right.
You did it, and
That's
what
exactly right.
That's the price you got to pay for. You know, I have a woman that works with us, and it's funny you say that because I swear a lot. It's, you know, one of the things that I have, and so I was using the F word a lot, so, you know, saying that word a lot, and she came into me and just in my office and just said, that word really offends me. Would you just stop doing it around me if you could? And I said, yes, I'm sorry, and I will really try. And over the last few years since she said that to me, I mean, a couple of times I've slipped up in anger or whatever,
Right.
but I've tried really, really hard
Yeah,
to not do that because she goes, it just offends me. Like to you, it's just a word, but to me, it offends
That's
me. And
right.
it's like, oh, okay,
That's exactly
I
right.
get that. I can.
Well, you know, I think that there's an intersection here that, you know, race and addictions and whatnot. But there is an intersection here that I think you're touching on, and that is, you know, when we are experiencing each other, okay? You're experiencing me from the entirety of your life. Everything that you've been through, everything you've experienced is right here, right now, and you're experiencing me that way. And I don't know those things, right? I don't know those things. And people don't know those things about me either. They just, you know. But if you tell me how you are experiencing me, I was standing outside a women's bathroom one time talking with a male colleague. A woman walked out of the bathroom. We knew who she was. And she said, guys, it's really creepy. I feel creepy coming out of the bathroom and
Two
encountering
guys
you.
hanging out here in front of the bathroom door.
And I could have said, oh, no, Merle, you misunderstood.
Right.
I'm not a creep. I could have said that, which would have denied her experience, right?
Right.
And her experience is truth. But I said, you know, thanks for the awareness. I really appreciate it. That was 25 years ago, and I have never stood
Right.
outside a bathroom door, a women's bathroom door, you know, since that time. Because what I was doing made her provoked a feeling of unease in her. And I'm not a creep. I'm not creepy. So if I had said that, it would have completely dismissed what she'd gone through. And then she would have to defend it. And then she would get mad. And then I'm going to go, what are you so mad about? Why are you people mad all the time? You know, don't make them mad, you know.
Right.
David, before we go forward, and just because I'm excited to continue this conversation or looking forward to where this is going to go from just a pure recovery standpoint, I just want to go back to that I'm just so captivated by that moment when you were in the jail cell and you had this real, I'm going to call it an awakening and an awareness. And even though that wasn't the moment with which you took your step into sobriety, it feels like it was the defining moment that changed your life, even though it took you 5 years.
It was the seed, you know.
Right.
It was without doubt, it was the seed. And I, you know, when I was growing up, you know, I grew up in a black neighborhood, and most of the people were poor, working poor. I mean, everybody worked, you know, pretty much. I remember in the 7th grade, my social studies teacher was defining slums, and he said South Walnut Street's a slum. That's where I lived, you know, and you know, so there was this neighborhood, if you will, and there was drunkenness and addiction and domestic violence and, you know, murders and all that kind of stuff. But I didn't feel like that's where I lived. But there were some lessons, you know. We might have been poor, but I didn't know it, you know. We was 8. My parents owned their home. I mean, I was born in 1950. I don't know when my parents bought their house, but they owned it, you know. And so some of those lessons that I learned was the worst thing you can be is an ignorant black person, because people didn't want you educated. It used to be against the law for you to learn to read and write and all this kind of stuff. And you are someone who can lose everything you have to the power, and there won't be a goddamn thing you can do about it. But if you have knowledge, nobody can take that away from you. No one can take knowledge away from you. So that was, that was ingrained in me. That was a lesson, that learning is power, and learning is resistance. The ancestors who, under the threat of death, learned to read and write, their sacrifice. And so that was with me in that jail cell.
Isn't that kind of self thing? Like if I learn, if I educate myself, and we're not talking about necessarily formal education.
Right,
if I
right.
just become, the more I understand, the more I'm able to take care of myself, and the less dependent I am on other people or other outside influences or other, if you want to just call it what it is, other white power or white privilege or whatever the case is. Yes,
things like literacy. Literacy is the key that opens so many doors. And there's a play that I read, or a short story that I read, of an enslaved man who was a craftsman. And he built barns and houses and corrals, and so his owner would hire him out, and he'd be gone for 3, 4, 5 days, come back, bring the money, and he said to his owner, I think people are cheating you. I think you should teach me how to read and write, and do numbers, because then I'll know whether you're getting cheated or not. So his owner said, okay, taught him how to read and write and do numbers, right? And so all of a sudden, he's bringing home more money. He's bringing more money back to the plantation, and the plantation owner's thinking, that was really smart of me, and so he would be hired out. He'd be gone for 10 days, building the barn, right? So he got hired out, gone for 10 days, didn't come back, gone for 14 days, didn't come back, gone for 20 days, didn't come back, gone for 30 days. And so they start looking for him. And they come to this river crossing, maybe it's the Ohio River, you get to the other side, you got manumission. He said, you seen so-and-so and so-and-so and so? Well, yeah, he came through here 9 days ago, had freedom papers with him, said he was a free man. Wrote his own papers.
Hey, Dave, so let me just wrap up the personal stuff, because you have a few personal stories if you would share. One is that in early recovery, your first wife, I believe, got cancer.
Yes.
And that was tough for you, and I think you had a tough time, and you made it through, though, without using. Just talk to me a little bit about that. I think it's profound.
It is profound, and I have, moments like that, so that give me a sense of purpose, for every you and me, right? For you walk into a 12-step program, you walk into a treatment facility, I walk into a 12-step program, I walk into a treatment facility, there's 35 dead people, right? So the odds were against us, and I'm not under any illusion about why I'm not one of those 35, right? And so the gift of recovery to me means you didn't die, and it wasn't for lack of trying.
We spent years trying to kill. I never stuck a gun in my mouth. We spent years trying to kill ourselves.
It's like I played Russian roulette,
right, every day,
for 20 years, and so I didn't die, not for the lack of trying, but I lived, and I don't think that I was responsible for that. I think there's a power greater than me, or there are powers greater than me. I don't care how you define it, that kept me from dying, and that was the purpose, and the purpose is I'm supposed to be here, and I'm supposed to be doing something about it, and I'm supposed to be the gift of recovery that I have, in order to keep my recovery healthy and well and fresh. I got to share it. I got to give it away. And so my wife told me to get some help or get out. That was in October of '85. I started going to 12-step meetings. I got a counselor, and then in November of '86, she found a lump in her breast. It turned out to be malignant, and for the next 2.5 years, it was chemotherapy, radiation, mastectomy, amputation of her right arm, and then 2.5 years later, it killed her. And we had two kids. We had two kids. One was almost 11 when she passed, and the other one was almost 6. And while I was grief-stricken, and heartbroken, and her mother was there, her father was there, her brother was there, our kids were there, and we were all just heartbroken about it, But I didn't despair. I didn't despair like I did in that jail cell, And that was the first time, really the first time in my life where I put someone else first. Addicts and alcoholics don't do that, I put someone else first, and every need was met between the recovery community and our fellowship of Unitarian Fellowship of Athens, Ohio. She had to go to radiation 35 miles away, 30 straight business days of radiation. And someone from our church took her every day.
Wow.
And every day at 6 o'clock, either the church or the recovery community, every day at 6 o'clock, there was a meal at my front door. And I don't know if you know this one or not, but there was a day, and this was February of '89. They were done, they sent her home, said, we can't do anything else for you. Go home, make her comfortable. And my mother-in-law was there, my father-in-law was there, my brother-in-law was there, and my two kids were there. And I got into this headspace where I thought they all had a one-word vocabulary, and it was David, 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 David. And the walls started closing in on me. And I said, this is what I said. I said, God, if one more person says my name, I'm going to go crazy. And the doorbell rang. I mean, just like that, doorbell rang. I went to the doorbell. It was my sponsor. I said, I'm going to the store. When I get back, you got to give me something. I left. I came back. I said, and I didn't even tell him what was going on. I said, you got to give me something. You have to give me something now. And he said, this too shall pass. And when it passes, she's going to be gone, and you're still going to be here. And it went away. I got an essay called "God Rings the Doorbell."
I did know that story. You told me. So as we progress here and talk about the whole racial part, which is a lot of what we want to talk about. In those days when there were 30 people bringing you meals and stuff, I'm making the assumption that some of those people were white, some of those people were black.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I
absolutely.
think that's one of the things that you and I have always talked about, that in the rooms of recovery, for some reason, this whole idea of racial divide just falls by the wayside. And you have some great stories. And one of the best talks you and I ever had, we were sitting at your kitchen table, and you said something to me about, I never met a Republican that I liked until I got to know you. And I think I said something kind of off the cuff that I'm not sure I ever met a black person that I liked until I got to know you. And you and I have been really good friends from before that and even after that. And we've been able to bridge that gap. We've been able to joke about it, have serious conversations about it, talk about it, all of that stuff. And I don't know necessarily why that is. And so I'm interested on your perspective as to why that is.
Yeah, that's a great question, Mike. And the same sponsor, okay?
Does this happen to be a guy we both know?
You've never met him,
okay.
and he just passed about 2 years ago. But his name is Gary C. And in my hometown, they used to have a golf tournament, and it was a tournament honoring the first black JC. Okay, and so every year there was a golf tournament, play golf.
What's a JC? I'm sorry.
It's a service club.
The JCs, yeah.
Oh, like
It's
Kiwanis? Or
yep.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
And they had a golf course and all that kind of stuff. And so this tournament was honoring Mr. Lomax, who was actually my mailman when I was a kid. And so I would go. And when I got into recovery, I took, just like some of the trips we make, I took guys in the program with me to Chillicothe to play in this golf outing. And so Mitch has been, I took 3-4 guys, and Don drove. And so we're sitting at the banquet, and Don gets up and goes over to the keg and gets a beer. You know, and then he drank it and went and got another one. And he went and got another one.
Of course he did.
And I said to Gary, I said, "What's going on here?" He said, "I thought you knew." I said, "No, I didn't know." So, all right, we move forward, and Gary's telling me that he and Don are standing up on a tee, on a green, overlooking the next tee. And Don says to Gary, "You ever seen this many niggers?" You know? And Gary told me that, and I came out of my chair. You know, I said, "Are you kidding me? I'm the guy who took the guy who used the word, right?" And Gary said to me, "What are you going to do if he comes back?" Stop me cold. And I said, "I'll be the first person across the room to shake his hand, you know, because there's only one purpose in recovery, you know. Nothing can detract from recovery, you know. So if that guy walked in the door tomorrow, I'd be the first person across the room to shake his hand, you know. Nothing gets in the way of that. I don't care what it is, you know. For me, you know, that doesn't mean that we don't have people in the rooms, you know, who might be bigoted or biased or whatever, or intolerant. But in my recovery, I will not conduct myself in a way that turns somebody away. You know, if you're in the rooms, I'm gonna put my hand out to you. You know, no matter what you've done. You know.
Yeah, it's not a. You know, it's funny. I had a counselor back when I first came in who said I was complaining about people in recovery, and he said, "Look, there's shitheads in every organization.
That's
doesn't
right.
matter what it
That's
is.
exactly right.
But the vast number of people, and I always think of it in terms of what Sherry, you know, our good friend Sherry says, which is why so much of that stuff falls by the wayside in the rooms of recovery, whichever program it is, typically has to do with the fact that we recognize our common suffering. We recognize the part about hanging a sheet from the pipe at a Durango jail and hanging yourself or doing whatever it is. And so we look beyond race and gender and sexual orientation and all those things because we understand that at its core, we're going to die. And
well, that's exactly
you
right.
may be the only person who can help me today not to die, regardless of what the color of your skin is
That's
or
right.
the color of my skin
That's right.
is.
And I'll tell you the truth, you know. And you know, along the way, Mike and Betsy, there's you know, they're called 12-step programs. They're not one-step programs. Right? You know, if there are one-step programs, you know, you put away the pipe, you put the plug in the jug, and it's like, "I'm free, honey." You know?
Well, I wanted it to be a 4-step program. One, I know I'm screwed up. 2, I'm sorry. Everybody forgive me. 3, let me save the world. And 4, let me find a wife.
Give me a company to run. 5, give me a company to run.
I know how to do that. We got to figure it out, Stone.
You know, but it's not. You know, so what happens? You know, that our actions and behaviors and our whole being as active addicts is just creates wreckage and carnage in people's lives. You know, not just our own. And so there's these 11 other steps. You know, I said, now clean all this shit up.
Right.
And if you try to do that, I mean, if a person just tries, you know, with just a mustard seed of faith, you know, the mustard seed meeting in Manhattan. They give you a mustard seed when you're a beginner.
Yeah, that's right.
This is all the faith you need, you know. That's at one of the oldest meetings in the country.
I think, Dave, it's kind of hard to. I think that if you actually apply the principles of a 12-step program or a good faith or any of those things, I don't think you can be bigoted and be doing those things at the same time.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't think it's. I think that the love factor comes in too much, that you can't. You can't just have that. Like, you can't. They don't go together. Like,
well,
if you're practicing and living this, you're not going to feel that way.
Well, I agree, and I think that, you know, for starters, I don't know that I've run across anybody in my time in recovery who does recovery. You know, who practices it in some way, shape, or form in their lives steadfastly. You know, and honestly, who hasn't bettered their life.
Right.
You know, and you know, people. I mean, from the simple thing of getting off probation or getting off parole or getting a driver's license back. Well, we've watched people get jobs. We've watched people go back to school, get educated. We've watched people get their kids back. You know, Tanya, talked to Tanya, and you know, she had a associate's degree, and I talked to her. I said, "Come on over here, and, you know, get your bachelor's. Come on, you can do this. You know, in this program." And I sit in my office at the university, and I see her just, you know, walking and, you know, digging a rut as she walk, smoking. I said, "What's wrong?" She goes, I can't stand being in the classroom with some other people. I said, "Shut up and get your ass back in that room and go to college." You know, she got a degree. You know? People better in their lives, you know, and I don't think we can. Those other 11 steps tell us we have to examine our lives, you know, and we have to live an examined life, and in living that, we look at our shortcomings. You know, we look at, you know. Like I'm judgmental, I'm critical, you know, I'm impulsive, you know, and
Oh, I know.
yeah, you know that about it, right? Yeah.
So,
suddenly the thought occurred to me, I can use my driver.
It occurred to me. So, you know, I think it's 7-8 years ago now, and I want to talk about your whole take on like just race and recovery and that. But before we do that, you know, this is cool because it's so personal to me. It's so germane to, and we could bring on somebody else to talk about race, but for you and I, we have this history now, and it's actually a fairly long history. And 7 or 8 years ago, I forget how many it was, you invited us to this golf tournament that you and this guy Mitch that we've gotten to know have been going to for years. And you invited me and Bud. And so the three of us, now we don't all know each other all that well. We kind of, okay, we're going to hop in a car and we're going to drive 13 hours to Wytheville, Virginia. We're going to spend 3 days together playing golf. Then we're going to get in the car and drive back.
Close quarters.
For 13 hours.
Close quarters.
And we're all like, I think we're all a little nervous. I won't speak for you, but for me, I was a little nervous. And so there's Dave and I sitting in the front, and there's Bud in the back. And if you don't know Bud is a great guy who just is great at throwing out these little things, understanding that Dave and I are just going to like, oh, that's going to start like a war. And the funny thing was, it never started war. It started great dialogue. We laughed, we joked, we cried, we had incredible conversation. And that first trip when we got back, I remember going somewhere a week or two later with you, and you made a comment in a group of people that we never had a crossed word on that trip. Like we had 13 hours in the car, 3 hours together at a golf, or 3 days together at a golf tournament, 13 hours on the way back, and we never had a crossed word. And I think that that's such a tribute to you and to me and to Bud for being able to recognize that at the core is this genuine love for each other.
Absolutely.
We differ in the way we see the world and things like that, but our genuine love for each other allowed us to do that. And I remember one other thing. You and I, it was after one of the mass shootings, I think, I went to Starbucks with you. And I said, Dave, we need to do something to change the world. We need more love in this world. We need more recovery, and we need this to be part of the world, because somehow we're able to manage this. We're able to joke and have serious conversations and all that, but recognize, I don't care what color your skin is. It doesn't matter to me. You're my friend.
Yeah, that's right.
And like, how do we do that? Like, what do we do going forward to change that?
You know, that's, you know, I think that's one of the, you know, we've been given that. You and I we didn't do anything, you know. I mean, you know, that's a gift of recovery. And I think for me, in that car ride, I mean, we didn't have any cross words, but it wasn't because we were avoiding talking about something. You know what I mean?
That's right.
It wasn't, don't, you know, walk on eggshells, don't say that, don't, you know. We had some, I thought, some pretty intense and deep, honest discussions. And that's the first time in my life where I've ever listened to a person who had a different political orientation, honestly, you know, and listened for why. And what small business owner, employees, you know, worker compensation, unemployment insurance, you know, and listening to that and understanding that, you know, that your politics are associated with your well-being, you know, and the well-being of your business, and that there's a lot of stuff that you have to look out for and pay attention to that I had never thought about, right? Likewise, me as an educator and a mental health counselor, my politics are also shaped by that, you know? And so my politics, as it relates to my career and stuff like that, are more career-wise and treatment-wise and services-wise. We do better when there are Democratic administrations in Congress, okay? You do better when there are Republican, and that's just the way it is. And I understood that for the first time, you know? But I didn't get a sense of intolerance from you, you know? Because I know you said, I don't care who you marry, I don't care where you live, you know, you do what you want. And so there's this social part from this world that I lived in that was incongruent with your politics, you know. That's when I started calling you a closet Democrat.
Right.
You know?
Which, as time has gone on, he has absolutely began to lean a little bit lefter.
All right, so wait a minute, time out.
But
I need to make
I did have one
rebuttals.
other thing I wanted to say there, and that was, it's the importance of the recovery program.
Yeah.
You know, it's the importance of the 12-step program. That is elevated above all else. And I remember saying to you, you cannot say anything that's going to make me not love you.
Right.
You can't. And why? Not because you're some great, you know, tremendous. No, you're just a drunk and a drug addict like me. But because we're in this program, and because it has a primary purpose and nothing can get in the way with that I am not going to let anything get in the way of that. You know?
You and I have that very similar feeling that we probably the reason why this has been able to work in that is because no matter what, I always put the fact that I care about you as a person and an addict in recovery more than any of the other stuff. And I remember on those early trips and some of the other conversations we had, the flip side of that for me is, you know, I like to think that I'm not bigoted. I suppose there's some in me, maybe there is, you know, I don't know, and you and I have had that conversation, but I can remember when you were talking to me about your experience and the black experience, and I was like, well, just get out of the city then, get out of the slums and go get a job, and you were like, well, but it's not that easy, you know, the schools don't have the same books that they're able to get in white areas and things, and all those things are not things that I think I didn't believe. I just didn't think about them because they weren't my experience. I was like, I don't, like, you know, I was looking at it going, well, just quit being lazy and go do something.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
you were
exactly.
able to say to me, no, it's not necessarily that. And I think the point is when we get to a place where we continue to paint with this broad brush, that's when we're not listening to each other. And I think for whatever reason, you and I were able to, and have been able to for a lot of years, to listen to each other.
Well, you know, you're hitting on something that's, okay, so we go back to this thing, your experience, my experience. You know, we have these experiences. Now, there was a time in my life, okay, where I lived in Tallahassee, Florida, and we smoked pot every day. Every day. You know, I didn't miss a day for 2 years. And we grew it, and it was good, right? But there was a time in this group of people where we, in our experience, this is like 1974, 73, we really believed that everybody smoked pot.
Right.
You know? And so our experience was encapsulated, right? But it drove our assumptions of normalcy, right? So there you are. Your experience is encapsulated. Well, go get a job. You know, we make assumptions of normalcy based upon our own experience, and when we take those assumptions of normalcy across an intersection to someone who's different, it doesn't apply. You know, like your kid. I have an adopted child, right? And so he's in an elementary school classroom, and they're doing a family tree, and they get worksheets on a family tree, and just do your family. And my son says, I don't know this. I'm adopted, or just do it anyway. See, assumptions of normalcy, right? You're an elementary school kid. You're in a classroom, and your parents are divorced, right? And the teachers, you know, they bring in somebody to talk about Banana Splits. And Banana Splits is the program for children from broken homes. So you're like 8, right? And you got a mom and a dad, and the divorce has been amicable, and your dad's house is over there, your mom's house is over here. You go back and forth. You have 2 Christmases, you have 2 homes, 2 birthdays. You think life's pretty good, and somebody's telling you you're from a broken home, and you got to try to conceptualize that. My home.
What does that mean?
What's broke? My home's not broken.
Assumptions of normalcy.
Well, you know, that's that. I had the same thing
the epiphany for me that was similar to that whole pot smoking story was weddings. You know, I remember the first wedding I went to when I was in recovery, and my idea of a wedding was, a wedding is just a big drunk fest. Everybody gets loaded, women are stripping out on the floor, people are going home with it. Like, that's what my assessment
That's
of
the
wedding
bridesmaid, the groom, or the groom, you know.
Then I go to this wedding, and I recognize that there's only 2 out of 20 tables with really drunk people. The rest of the people are relatively normal, just eating dinner, having a good time, talking. And I'm like, what's wrong with this wedding? Like, I'm thinking, like, this is a fucked up wedding, not that this is the right way. Because my perception was, every wedding I ever went to, I was with the people who all got drunk. So I figured that was just what happened at every wedding. Like, everybody just got drunk. That was what I kind of thought.
So can I'm sitting here and there's a couple of things that I'm
very quiet.
I know. Well, you know,
That's kind of
every
cool.
time,
Betsy's deep.
every
She's
time
really
David
deep.
talks, for me, it's kind of, I don't know, it kind of fills my soul because it's so, it's just so profound.
I don't
and
feel
and
your
it and
soul
it's
when I
thoughtful.
talk.
Oh my God! you fill my freaking tolerance level up
Get
to
back to me,
here.
please.
Yes, David. Let me make it about. But it's just so. I think it's just so thoughtful. And it just touches me in just these really deep places and makes me think. So I hear these stories about a connection in recovery that has allowed you both to come to a place and a new level of understanding and acceptance of race, of differences, and so the question I think that kind of lives in me at this point is, what is foundational to your processes that would then allow our country to hear from, to be able to navigate
that's a
racial
great question.
recovery?
You know, Betsy, I think that's a. I mean, if I had the answer to that one, I'd be on television right now.
Right. Well, you're
saying,
going to be on television, but
but
not quite.
I'll be talking, Oprah.
Listen, we're gonna be Oprah someday.
But I think there's 2 pieces to that for me, and what I think we don't have as a country, as a people. And it actually intersects here in Plattsburgh, and this may be some kind of romanticized stuff by me, but I don't care. But one of the founders of the 12-Step program was stationed here in Plattsburgh at the outbreak of World War I. And out there on the parade grounds where my kid played soccer and we'd go to the gym and all that, this person's footprints are out there, right? And this is also a big time area on the Underground Railroad.
Mm-hmm.
And Sojourner Truth, Harriet Tubman, John Brown, all abolitionists and people who ferried people. If you could get to Vermont or Quebec, nobody can make you go back. If you got caught in New York, if you were an escaped enslaved person and you got caught in New York, it was a fugitive slave state, they could send you back. But if you got to Vermont or Quebec, you're free. My son and I, my youngest and I, reenacted a crossing of the lake on the Weatherwax, which was a boat that ferried people from here to Vermont. And so, how close did their footsteps come? How close did the founders' footsteps come to the people on the Underground Railroad? And what was essential in both of those? Well, I think that the abolitionists at the core, Harriet Tubman was a Christian. Abolitionists, for the most part, were spiritual, religious people, and at the core of their belief system about freedom was that it was moral. Mm-hmm. It was a moral issue, and it was therefore it was a spiritual issue. And at the core of recovery for me and many people, it's a spiritual issue. It's a living spirituality in a way that that helps me walk upright and put my feet in front of one another and think about how I affect people and whatnot. And I think that's what they share in common, and that's why I owe so much to those who went before me. And that intersects here in Plattsburgh, New York. I sat in a church in a meeting one time on a Sunday night and realized I had read earlier in the day in the paper about the Underground Railroad and churches in and around Plattsburgh. And I was sitting in a church that was on the Underground Railroad that had a false altar, and they'd hide people in there and stuff like that, and sitting there seeking my freedom, right? It's just it's a powerful image for me, and so I think that you're asking me what's at the core. What do we not have? I just don't think we have this, and I'm not talking about religion. I just don't think we have a sense of spirituality that promotes us caring more for each other. You know?
Do you think that it might be a lack of, and I don't know how to phrase this, common spirituality? So your spirituality may be founded in some may be God, some may be Jesus Christ.
Exactly.
Or spirituality for some people in recovery have nothing to do with actual religion. It's a foundational sense of.
I think you're right, and I would say spirituality is simple as I'm beholden to you.
Before you answer that, I think that what you're saying, we did one of our early podcasts, we talked about this, and we talked about the whole, as soon as the kind of word God or Christian or Jesus Christ or any of those things comes out, the hair on the back of everybody's neck stands up. And I think the point that you're making, and you and I agree on this, is that you don't need to have this rigid religious thing. Not that there's anything wrong with it. If you want to go to church and do that, that's fine.
That's fine.
You don't need to have that to be a spiritual.
That's exactly right.
Living a spiritual life, and I think that's a lot of the place where people get hung up on it, is they have to put a label on it. There has to be a label for me. I'm not spiritual if I don't have a label to it.
That's right.
I don't belong to this thing, then I don't have a label. But some of the stuff that you talked about, and I love the way that you phrase it. It really does come down to those simple things. And first off, you have to remember that the beauty of what we have that you don't share is that our common suffering, that desperation place that we got to, that you can't recreate in your mind because you didn't get there, is what allows us to put all the other petty, I shouldn't call them petty, but all the other prejudices aside, because we recognize what the end result can be if we don't do that. And so I don't know how you get all of American society to suffer from something in common so that then the commonality can come together. You always hope that things like a 9/11 or a pandemic or something would do that. It would force us all to look and go, you know what, this pandemic doesn't discriminate. I mean, it has more of an effect on minority communities. There's probably reasons for that don't necessarily have anything to do with the pandemic. They may have to do with the fact that there's not as healthy people, the food is not, there are a
inner
lot of
city
reasons.
living, close quarters, breeding.
And so, how in American society do you get us all to look at this, commonly? I
think that there's something to the suffering part. I mean, there really is something to that, and I don't know how to articulate it. Viktor Frankl, who wrote Man's Search for Meaning, was a prisoner at Auschwitz. And one of the things that he observed in the midst of this hell, in the midst of this horrendous, enduring hell, was some people laid down and died, and some people lived, and what was it? What is it? This gave rise to existentialism and all that kind of stuff, or the theory of existentialism as a counseling theory. But the reality of the matter is that somewhere in there, he stumbled upon humanity, in experiencing the worst of human behavior, the worst of humanness. It's almost impossible for me to call it human, but in there found this kernel of faith. I don't even know what to say. Found this kernel of hope, of something about the human spirit, something, the human spirit, let's call it that. The human spirit is something that we all share. But it can be degraded. It can be degraded, and people can also be, my human spirit was degraded, okay? But other people's human spirit can be anesthetized. And it can be anesthetized by the material world, okay? And because faith in materialism will make a person, will turn a person into someone who will exploit someone else for their own gain.
Right.
And so I think that the material world is too important in the world that we live in, and that the amassing of money and the amassing of things elevates material above humanness and the spiritual. And I think that we're way tipped. And everybody wants a nice place to live. Everybody deserves to have transportation to work. You know, everybody deserves the American dream. I mean, it's there, right? But when the dream is a driven fantasy, then we get gluttony. And you know, instead of one decent vehicle, I got 4, and they all cost $400,000. Instead of one nice home, I've got one here, I've got one in Hilton Head, I've got one in LA, I've got one in El Baja, and I've got one in Cabo. You know, and I think that hurts us tremendously. And you know, satisfaction, and I think that when a person is addicted to the material world, there's no satisfaction and fulfillment. You know, you cannot find satisfaction and fulfillment in the material.
And you can never, you know, when you get addicted to the material world, it's always about you chasing what other people
That's right.
have.
Yep.
And so
Yep.
no matter who it is, like I can amass more than Dave Stone has, so then I need to look for the next person who has
Yep.
more
Yep.
so that I can get more than them. So until you get to the absolute top, you're never satisfied with what you have.
And then you say, you're right, and if you got more than me, and I'm in that trail,
Yeah.
I envy what you got.
Yeah.
Envy's a sin. Envy's a deadly sin, right? So I'm going to get what you got. And then when I got more than everybody else, I'm going to say, I want what God's got.
You know what, Lizzie makes a great comment about this, talking about that some of the greatest things that we've ever done in our marriage, and some of the greatest things that you and I have done, didn't really cost any money or very little money. Like, it's not, you know, it is cool to have money. It's cool to be able to get on a
Yeah.
plane and go to the Caribbean and have a nice week on. I mean, all of those things are nice, but they don't provide me the internal joy that I get out of doing this, which doesn't, like, this is just a dialogue.
This doesn't cost anything.
And what you have in the bank, what you have materially, assets, don't come close to the wealth that you have
100%.
in your life, in the relationships. And that's the thing about the existential piece, and that is that it's the relationship, and it's the relationships where authenticity runs the show. You know?
So there is this piece, and I apologize, David, but you know, I continue. So you know, trying to solve the world's problems here. I'm sitting here, kind of amidst two men in recovery that share this common suffering that
Two
allow
really great men.
Well, one really amazing man.
And one arrogant one.
And one and have Mike. And you know, feeling like I'm not in the cool kids club because I don't have the common suffering that gives you this bond and this connection that I think has been incredibly healing on a bigger level, which is okay. I mean, I'm okay because I'm still kind of I'm like an honorary member of at least being in the spirit of that.
Betsy, I got to tell you something though. I'm sorry for interrupting you. But
Okay.
I have to tell you this. I don't agree with you, and you know that you don't share that, because I remember the first time I ever met you. You know, and I'm standing there, and I meet you. Mike introduces me to you, and I'm standing there. I'm going, oh my God, this woman is fully present. She is so fully present. Knocked me over. You know? Now, in another time in my life, I would have interpreted that differently. You know, I would have interpreted.
You would
that.
thought I was hitting on you or something.
Baby, right. You were just saying, you were just waiting for you to say when and where. But in recovery, and that's one of the things that recovery has taught me. You know, I actually now know what it means to love women. Okay, because it used to mean having sex with them. That's not love, right?
Right.
And I can love men, and I used to be afraid. You know, but now I don't have to be afraid. But I thought. I could see you. I could see your aura. I could see your spirit. You know, and so
See me.
I would not I would not say you're not in the club. I would not say you're
Well,
not in
thank
the
you
club.
for that.
Because you are so damn fully present
Thank
all
you.
the time.
Thank
and it's
you.
like, and now that I know it, I have to kind of get ready for it. I'm going to see Betsy today. You can't be taken off guard by that, So I don't agree with you. I experience you. I experience you as a person who values the connectedness,
Yes.
and in the connectedness is the spiritual. And that's what makes you one of us.
I think, I think that you're right about that, and I think that we joke with you and all that, and even in our company where we have so many people that are in recovery, a lot of people who are not in recovery are like, this isn't cool because I'm not one of the cool kids, like I don't get it. And I think the point of that is that, first off, I don't think Dave or I would ever wish the suffering that we went through on anybody to have to get this. The goal is, what do you do to not have to go through the suffering but still be able to get it? And on some level, you do. Like
And what is addiction? Part of addiction is about not wanting to be present, right? Not wanting to be present. So here we are, not anesthetized anymore, living an examined life, trying to be present, and here's a person who's fully present. I had a brother. Now, my parents had 6 kids. 5 of us lived to adulthood. All 5 of us are addicts and alcoholics. There are 4 of us left. The one who passed away, my brother Harold, was an alcoholic, and he would not have been able to stay in a room with you.
Really?
With your presence. It would have driven him from the room. He couldn't take it. He could not take it. And I don't know what the threat was to his psychological, infrastructure or whatever, but he couldn't stand that, And so I find, so here's the deal then, as a recovering person and as a black man, and so here you are and fully present, and you're going to interact with me and experience me, and you're going to allow me to show you who I am rather than you deciding who I am based upon what you see.
Right.
It's just critical. And I've in this program, of recovery, I've seen bigoted people stop being bigoted. I saw a man stand up in a meeting. This man he was in a meeting, sitting next to my friend Mark M. And Mark M's a gay man. And this man came to this meeting for months and months and months and months and months. And he stood up in a meeting and said to Mark, "You make it really hard for me to be homophobic."
I love that.
That's a gift.
I love that.
That is a gift.
I love that.
It is one of the things that I've always really loved about having you as my friend is that we have been able to joke about that. Like, I can joke with you about race, and it doesn't. Like, we're okay doing it. Like,
That's right.
There's a great deal of humor in our lives, and I think that's probably because there's not venom to it. It's not it's done in a, like, we know how we.
Well, you're right. We can joke about it. And we do joke about it. And you just made me realize, in my recovery, I have never told any of the jokes that I told when I was drinking.
Right.
Not any of them.
It's different.
It's really different.
It's different.
It's really. Yeah.
So it certainly seems to me like somewhere amidst your recovery, you've gone to this place of commonality. You've reduced and I love this term, say the word for me.
Anesthetized.
Anesthetized, which is, I think, a condition that much of society probably suffers from. And what recovery has done has allowed this connection, which then allows you to be able to have the most challenging conversations that don't land or sit
Right.
poorly and wrong, and somewhere in that, I think that Rochelle Gregory, when she was here with us, she talked about how even people who have had adverse childhood experiences, ACEs scores, and then therefore have suffered this trauma, the ones we have to figure out how we build a resistance or resilience. And it certainly begins to feel like me that somewhere in the rooms of recovery, whatever your recovery program, there's this resilience that seems to kind of kind of generate, and it's generated what I think is a racial healing for
Yeah.
both of you in your relationship, and there's got to be something in that.
Yeah, and that's the
Gotta
part,
be
you know,
something in
that's
that.
like, they're not one-step programs, right, you know? And I think that, you know, and not that we don't have intolerant people, you know? Not that we don't have people who never get past some of that stuff. And, all I can do is try not to be a part of it and try not to make a contribution to it. And given the opportunity to call it out and spell that out to someone, so yeah, I don't want to paint a picture that we don't have any of that. You know, that's not true. You know, and these golf outings that we've been on, and Mitch was a man that I met the day I came into the rooms, and I've known him for 35 years. We'd go to these golf outings, and driving from Ohio to North Carolina, South Carolina, and driving past a golf course in South Carolina, he says, maybe we should try to stop and play there. And I said, I don't think we can play there. And he goes, what? And I said, I don't think I can play there. And he gets it, he gets it. And then, we get down to the golf outings with these other recovering men, and Mitch is telling me that, 4 or 5 straight holes, this guy hits a golf ball and goes, isn't that just like hitting a you-know-what in the ass? And does it 3 or 4 times. And Mitch finally says to him, dude, my sponsors are black, man. I really need you to stop that. And I didn't get mad. I just stayed away from the guy, right? Mm-hmm. I don't want to be in proximity to him. I don't hate him, but given what's coming out of his mouth, I don't have any reason to want to breathe the same air that he breathes. So I stay out of his way. So the next year, I go back down, right? This guy's on the host committee, and I walk up to the table at the golf course. Dave, how you doing? This is the same guy that was using the N-word all through the golf course, the whole, until Mitch asked him to stop. They got shirts and hats and stuff, and he goes, what size shirt do you wear? He comes around the table, throws his arms around me, says, here, you like this color, what size? Here's take 2. People only getting 1. He goes, take 2. And I'm thinking, holy shit. I think I'll get 3. And the man is transformed.
Do you think it was because of the, that awareness that he had?
I think it's because of something that he did in his program.
I think
some work that he did.
I think that Dave's right, and the part that I agree and disagree with you, I guess, is I don't think it's possible to be living the program the way that it's outlined that we live and to still remain bigoted long term. Like those people that are bigoted have been living in a one-step program, not in the.
That's right. Yes.
For those of us that have
That's
done
true.
work,
That's true.
You get to this place where that stuff falls from you. Yeah. So, hey Dave, as we get close to wrapping up here, I think we would be remiss to not talk about one of my favorite women in the world, who is your wife, who is, hugely probably responsible for a lot of where you are, what kind of human being you are. And Jean Ann is obviously a white woman. You're married to a white woman. What has that been like, just in a kind of a nutshell?
Well,
okay,
yeah, and I think that the first thought that comes to mind is that we work at not allowing the world and its some of its warped perceptions define who we are. I'm not going to become who you think I am. As a matter of fact, I'm going to work really hard to show you something different. And so that's us. That's who we are. And my partner Jean Ann is she's a passionate pursuer of social justice. She fights every day for equity for people. She has a black son, who, and watching that tape, the trial is going on now, but watching that tape, she could imagine that was her son, and so, and white women who are parents of black kids are invisible. They don't get thought about in that. And that's a powerful, powerful message of her pain, right? Around this. And, you know, we have we've had a very good life. 27 years. We'll be 28 years in May, and we have 4 kids, blended family. We have 4 kids. They're all great. You've met them all, and we have a good life. And turmoil and stuff from when we figure out that somebody, it doesn't take long to figure out that somebody doesn't approve, right? You know, I'm not inviting you back, right? I've been 15 years in Plattsburgh, okay? 15 years in Plattsburgh, and we're gatherers. We bring, you know, we gather people together in our home, you know, and my home is a refuge. My home is a harbor. And if you got any of that stuff in you, and I figure it out, you're not coming back. There's 15 years, probably 4 people been in my house. I've never invited back. And I'm not mad at them. You don't belong here. You don't belong in this, you know. And so we build, I think our life is built on having like-minded people, having people committed to justice and fairness and a spiritual orientation of some kind, right? You can be flowers. I don't care. You know, that our humanity is clear to each other. I can see yours. You can see mine. I don't deny you yours. You don't deny me mine. And I like our life. You know, it's been very good. And you know, I think that even though we live these examined lives, it doesn't mean that my language and my thinking and my orientation is free of distortion. Okay, you know, if I talk to a counselor at a treatment program in September of 1985, a month before I got sober, and that person said to me, "Well, we don't think you need inpatient. You could probably do outpatient." That's what they said. What I heard was, I'm not that bad. So I'm capable of distortion, you know, and I'm also capable of distorting, you know, when I was talking earlier about your presence and what that would have meant to me when I was drinking and drugging, I would have interpreted that sexually. That's a distortion, and
Sure.
it's a distortion of who you are, and it's my distortion of who you are. So it doesn't mean that that's all, that hasn't all gone away, right? I have to work on that every day. And so when someone tells me, you know, I have students. I'm 70 years old. I'm raised on the binary model, right? Male, female, right? My students are telling me, you know, binary is arbitrary. It's, you know, it's stratified. You know, it's continuum. And so I say, oh, thank you. You know, thank you for teaching me that. And now, if I make an example or something like that, and I use the binary, would you remind me that it's not binary? Because I need your help. You know, I need your help to broaden my awareness, right? And I'll ask for that, and I'll thank you for it when you do it. You know, so it's work. That work didn't stop. You know, I've been doing that all my life, and you know, and I get transgendered students, right? You know, and I go, oh God, I'm getting ready to say something to the student. The student has raised their hand, right? And I'm going to respond to them. And I'm a binary guy. He, she. Which one is it? He, she? You know, I stop and ask. Can you tell me your pronouns again? I'm really trying to learn this. Can you tell me what your pronouns are?
Right.
I just want to affirm who you are. Right. You have had enough of people refusing to affirm who you are, people trying to convert you from who you are, and I don't want to be a part of that. I want that to be repugnant to me. So tell me your pronouns again.
Hey Dave, you know, I'm glad that you brought, I think that's great. You know, you obviously are, if we're thinking about it in terms of tolerance or rigidity or whatever, I would credit you with being more tolerant or less rigid than me. But it's nice to hear you say that. And you know what's great about that, or what's great about open conversations like this? I'm not that far along in that piece. Like where you're at in that piece, I'm not that far along. I still get annoyed by the whole, use the right pronoun and stuff. And I'm sure at some point it'll come around for me. But you're right, that it takes, we don't just, society's not just going to switch in an instant.
Right,
We're not all
right.
of a sudden going to wake up one day and say, oh, no, there's no longer bigots, that everything is equal. And it doesn't work like that. It takes time, and we all have to be willing to work at it. And I think the
you're right.
reason why this works is because we've been willing to say, we're going to work at this.
Yes,
we're not
exactly.
going to go with our jaded
Exactly.
view and say,
Yeah.
this
And,
is the way it's going to be. Like,
I could envision a teacher. I'm a teacher. I could envision that moment. What is the pronoun? LGBTQIA. Did they add another letter this week? And catch me up. But I could imagine, from my perspective, thinking it's an inconvenience to have to figure that out.
Yep.
Okay, so in my world, it's an inconvenience to figure that out. But in that person's world, it's not an inconvenience.
It's their identity.
It's just simply an
It's just the
affirmation,
who they are.
And so, and I think that what's really important in this is that we in recovery, our friendship would end in a heartbeat. If you said to me, "You got to go to treatment," it would end in a heartbeat. We would jettison this friendship if it meant saving the other person's life, because we ain't friends. We always got to remember that. In the end, we ain't friends. We're in a boat that was sinking. We were dying, and that will always come first. At least that's my thinking. When I told my wife when I was dating her and getting serious about her, I said, "I got to say, you'll never be first in my life."
Lizzie and I have Lizzie's in recovery, obviously. We have the same kind of thing, and it's not that I wouldn't love you or any of those things, but I can't be in a relationship with somebody that's active in addiction, and I can't be friends with people. Not that I can't be friendly with them,
Right.
I still do that.
Exactly.
They're not going to be in my circle.
That's right. Yeah.
Hey, Dave, this.
I'd rather lose the
Can I-
friendship than
Do you
the
have
friend.
something else?
Yeah,
before we wrap up?
so for me, I just want, I might wrap up my kind of circle back to all of this, and I guess my aha that has come from this conversation is what recovery has brought to the both of you in terms of this race and recovery modeling that I think has bigger implications if it can grow beyond the rooms of recovery. One is the desire to be aware of others outside of you, just the desire, and the desire to be introspective, to look both inwardly at yourself and their healing, as well as being able to see other people and where they are in their world. And I think that the recovery programs have brought you that awareness, and I would just love to find that magic, whatever it is, to give people the right to have to give them that gift of introspection and self-awareness, as well as the desire to want to see others.
You know where that comes from, though? That a lot of that comes from the idea that when you have that moment of clarity, like you had and I had, and all the people that we know and are friends with have had, the moment of clarity is that, oh shit, I got to stop drinking and using, or it's going to kill me. But it's also that, Jesus, maybe the way that I lived all along hasn't been right. Like maybe the way that I've seen the world, like there has to be that acknowledgement that maybe everything I've thought about the world is not necessarily right.
Might not
be
be true.
I should re-examine it.
Yeah.
Well,
And it's that desire to want to look at it.
This is so interesting, and I would love to come back, because I had some notes and whatnot. We didn't get to some of the nuances and stuff about race and addiction, so I'd love to come back. But Betsy, there's many people, myself included, early recovery. You get a year, all that kind of stuff, and going to meetings, and just life is really good, and this stuff really works, and like this would work. We should take this out there. And founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, Bill Wilson, wanted to do that, right? Wanted to sell it, right? Bottle it up to sell it, and those members at that time had dinner with John D. Rockefeller, and Bill Wilson's like, he's going to give us money. 4 floors, detox, treatment, education, college, craftsmanship. We're going to put neon up, and this is why I think there's a spiritual component to this. So they have this dinner, and John D. Rockefeller says, "You got a really good thing here. I'm going to give you $500. If I gave you more than that, you would fight."
Mm-hmm.
Money,
So, money, property, and prestige divert people.
Yeah.
And so it's like, and then Mike, back in the day, we couldn't get our egos in the same bar, right? And now we can get our egos in the same room.
We can get our egos in the same car.
In a car for 13 hours.
Oh, yeah, right.
Driving to Virginia.
And we ain't going to get no closer than that.
With Trevor's ego.
Oh, my
That's a miracle, right?
Lucky you got a sunroof.
And if I'm still an alcoholic, right? I'm still a man. I'm still heterosexual. I'm still middle class. So I have trappings with that, right? Well, I'm still an alcoholic, which means I'm capable of alcoholic thought, right? And if I'm capable of alcoholic thought, that means that, like, if I went out and started converting people, become evangelical, and
do you know that we could probably sit here and talk for 3 hours about this, but I will tell you, and then we're going to wrap up, and I want to tell you 2 things. First off, that one of the things that we did with MHAB, which is what this is, and the place that we did, and which you helped me with when we were in the early days, it was one of my fears, was that, if I start doing this and I start, reading my own press clippings and people start saying how wonderful I am, like, that's not good for me. Like, I don't need help from people telling me how wonderful I am.
That's
my
right.
ego is perfectly
That's
capable
right.
of taking me off in left field. And I'm fortunate that I have people like you and Lizzie and Dave and people that in my life who remind me that, oh, it's really cool what you did, but it doesn't make you special. Like, that's great. Like, good for you. Keep doing it, but it doesn't
Keep
make
up the
you
good job.
something special. And I think the other point, Dave, is I would love to have you come back. I was thinking about it before you mentioned it, and I think that we should put this on as maybe a twice a year thing where we come and we talk, we get an update on where we are with racial divide and things, because I think it's just interesting, and I think that we have a unique ability, Dave, to be able to maybe let some people know that there are ways that you can get over whatever your feelings were. And I think that you brought up something that was so important, that it wasn't only about whatever prejudices I might have had before. You had those same kinds of things. So it's not a one-way street.
Absolutely.
It's like,
Absolutely.
and when we can just sit and talk about it, we can get to a place where we can have like conversation and friendship and stuff. And I think as I wrap this up, what I would say to people who watch this is, I'm trying to think of what can we say to somebody who struggles with racism or struggles with bigotry on any level. How do you get over it? And my advice, and I'd be interested in maybe a quick thought from you, is, my advice would be find somebody who's dramatically different from you and ask them to go have a cup of coffee or dinner and just talk to them like a human being. Like, just find somebody who doesn't agree with everything you say, who's a little bit different, and say, let's go out and have a cup of coffee and have a conversation, because I think that's how it starts.
Well, and yes, and I think and how do I develop this awareness? And I think that's exact. I used to say to people, when was the last time somebody sat at your dinner table who's different from you?
Right.
Invite somebody who's different. If a person came to your door and they were in a wheelchair, how would they get in? Just things that we don't think about, right? That I have the privilege of not thinking about. I don't worry walking across the parking lot at 10 o'clock at night on your campus after I teach a class. You would, right?
Sure.
And so, I didn't think about that because I had the privilege of not thinking about it. I'm like 60 times less likely to be attacked by someone in a dark parking lot than you are, right? So, for me to think about that and go, all right, so let's make sure that when we adjourn, that no one goes to the parking lot alone, right? You go in groups, right? and that's conveying an understanding, as opposed to, look, we got campus cops. This is a safe campus. Don't worry about it.
Work it out.
You're just being paranoid.
Yep.
See, but you said what? I think probably if I can put this in lay kind of non-recovery terms, people can work at lessening their biases and prejudices and stereotypes and distortions of others by being with people who are different and talking about getting to something that you have in common.
Mm-hmm.
What do you have in common that's important? What do you have in common that's special? What do you have in common that's sacred? Well, most people have a family, right? Most people have a career. Most people, have this, that, or the other. Family's important. Family's critical. And most people are trying to do that. They want a decent place to live. They want an opportunity. They want a career. Most of the people in the United States want that. So there are common, and let's just be human. No. Let's look at what we have in common. What do we value in common?
Sure.
I value marriage.
And don't get in the battle over everything that might separate us. Let's try to find something that's in common, and let's expand on that, and we'll ultimately get to the place where we can talk about that.
I think that's the simplest way I could put it. We have something in common. I mean, we've expounded on it greatly, but we really do have something in common that we share that's of primary importance in our lives. And that's from there we can work together.
So can we count you in as maybe we do this a couple times?
I'd love
Would you be
to.
willing
This is
come back?
great. I would love to.
That's cool. You
Yeah.
can't wear a tie though.
I didn't realize this was television. I thought it was radio. I have a voice for radio, right?
You do have a great
I have
radio
voice for radio.
voice.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You do have a
Absolutely.
great
But
voice.
you look
Now we're
good
gonna
too,
have
Dave. So
72
you're going to
minutes
be
of
fun.
uninterrupted.
We'll be-
Yeah. When I got my 30-year trip, I thought XXX. I'm going to get me a radio station. Triple X.
It will be interesting to see what the following of this one was. This is this is one of those topics that I think is cool,
Yeah.
and we could probably sit here and do this. We do have day jobs that we need to go to. So
And I think that you're and people watching it, we often have a tendency in this day and age to have knee-jerk reactions. And I would just say, pause. Just hit pause and let it pass. Because once I have the knee-jerk, I'm not hearing it anymore. I'm going in here with the structures that I have in here to interpret what you just said. And I'm not going to and come.
you're
to
already getting your rebuttal prepared rather than
exactly.
listening to what we
That's
say.
right. If you're getting your rebuttal prepared, you're not listening.
Yeah.
So thanks a bunch
Oh,
for coming.
thank you.
Do you
Thank
have
you.
anything you want to add in closing, Miss Vicenzio?
Oh, look at you, so formal. No, I don't. I think this has been a wonderful conversation. I love watching the two of you spar. That's always fun for me too. But really, I like the depth of the conversation that I feel like we always have, David. When I get a moment to spend with you, and really, I think that this has been just an incredibly healthy conversation. I know it's been for me, but I suspect for our listeners, it's going to be
I
too.
think you're right. And to me, I mean, 3 people. I mean, there's 5 people in the room, but ostensibly 3 people, and we have transformed one another in this hour and a half or whatever. We transform. That's a spiritual experience.
Sure is.
I'm better. I'm enhanced through this experience.
Thank you.
Well, we enjoy doing this, and again, thank you for coming.
It's cool. I'm enjoying myself.
I love you
Yeah,
love you like a brother.
I love you like a brother. You are my man.
We have had
We're
a
going
lot
to spend
of-
13 hours in the car in
We
a
have had a
couple
lot of
months.
fun. You're not smoking, right?
No, well, no,
Yeah,
no.
you
You guys, well,
Oh yeah.
yeah.
We're
But
smoking Chris in the new car.
because had we been, I think I've said several times, had the conversations that we had in the car, had we been in a bar, we would have been in the parking lot.
We'd have been in a fist fight.
Absolutely.
Before we got to Keysville,
Absolutely.
We'd have been in a
15
fist
miles.
fight.
Throw down, motherfucker.
Hey, wait, don't get up, don't get up. So, hey, don't forget your shirt.
I'm just going to wrap this up.
Oh,
You
sorry.
see the sweatshirt today, and I wore this is one of our designs that you can get on MHEB Marketplace.
MHEB
It says,
Marketplace.
Recovery is an inside job. Don't use, don't die. That's one of the, how do you become an old timer?
That's right. Don't
Recovery?
drink, don't use, don't
Don't
die.
use, don't die.
Don't die. So we use that regularly.
go and visit the MHAB website. There's blogs on there. There's other podcasts. You can certainly buy something if you want to, but you're not obligated. And we appreciate everybody for coming and listening to us. I think this was great conversation. I'm excited to see it. And I'm excited to have you come back, and we'll
I'll be
dive into this
happy
more
to.
in depth.
Thank
And
you.
I will tell you, Dave, you know what? You and I probably don't have the power to change the world, but to be able to sit here and have this kind of dialogue, maybe somebody out there who lives in the same world that you or I do can recognize that it can be different, and you can have a different.
Well, yeah, I mean,
That's just-
somebody can look at this, black man. This is like the Mod Squad. You remember the Mod Squad? A black,
The guy-
a
the guy
white,
with the big
and a
afro
woman.
with the
Rick,
Mod Squad.
Clarence Williams III, and Peggy Lipton, who married Quincy Jones. The Mod Squad. But I mean, look at what happened. I didn't call you a name. You didn't call me a name.
Yeah. Wait, I gotta shut down. We're done.
Sorry.
We gotta
I want to keep going. It's like a marathon.
forever. 13 hours of
Binge.
being part of this. I'm excited about it. So really, thanks again for coming, and we'll be back with some more of this in the future, and it's great stuff, and I'm proud to call you a friend and a brother. And,
You're my man.
and I just
Yeah.
love you. So thanks for coming. We'll see you
All
next
right.
week.
Very
Hey.
good.
COVID out.
COVID out.
Thanks for joining us today at Recovery Uncovered. No matter where you are in your recovery journey, or if you're supporting the recovery journey of a loved one, just know today is the first day of the rest of your life. Visit our website at mhab.org.
And if you want to become an old-timer in recovery, don't use and don't die. This has been Recovery Uncovered.